Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our second local planning committee meeting for the City of Norwich DRI. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick roll call just so we have a record of who is here. You can just unmute yourself and just let us know if you're in attendance. So we have my co-chair, Mayor Dolliver. Oh, here.
Oh, I see him.
Okay, so here, thank you. Myself, I'm here. John Antonowitz.
I'm here. Thank you.
Mary Brennan.
Here.
Shane Butler.
Here.
Tracy Chago.
Here.
Perry Dewey.
Here.
Robert Jeffrey.
Here.
Lindsay Lefevre.
Here.
Peggy Lopresti.
Here.
Alicia O'Neill.
Here.
Scott Ryan.
Here.
Chairman Senek. Patsy Smith. Adrian Zorno.
Here.
Jamie Mullen.
Here.
John Massey.
Here.
Okay. That is the LPC. Let me just check the list one more time. Okay. So before I turn the meeting over to our contacts at Bergman, I'm going to read a preamble. This will happen before each meeting. Each local planning committee member is reminded of their obligation to disclose potential conflicts of interest with respect to any of the projects that may be discussed today. If you have a potential conflict of interest regarding a project you believe will be discussed during the meeting, please disclose it now and recuse yourself from any discussion or vote about that project. For example, you may state that you or a family member have a financial interest in the project, or you were on the board of the organization proposing the project. Do any members need to make a disclosure?
Harry?
Yep.
Would that be moi?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I see Patricia is on. Okay. And I will also disclose I have a conflict of interest with the hotel project.
Carrie, I don't believe I have a conflict of interest, but I guess as we move forward with these meetings, are we going to know which project specifically we're talking about before the beginning of the meeting, so we know?
I don't know.
Yes, in general, you will as we get further into
Okay.
review of projects. I understand that now it's kind of hard. You don't know necessarily what will be discussed in this on this call. I think the consultants will be going over the projects that were included in the application. But then, down the road, there will be those additional projects that come in through the open call. And you can always recuse yourself, during the meeting if a project comes up for discussion that you have a conflict with. For those who do indicate that they have a conflict, I'll send you a form. It's an additional form for actual conflicts of interest. But I also ask that for those of you who have not returned the code of conduct, the signed code of conduct form, to please send that to me, Julie Sweet, julie.sweet@dos.ny.gov.
And just to clarify, if you have a conflict, you can provide factual data if it's appropriate to do so, but you just can't vote or be a part of the general discussion, correct?
Correct. It can answer factual questions and
Okay. So yeah, so anyone who knows they've already submitted a project or will be submitting a project and we think if that's being discussed, then now's the time to say so. If not, we'll.
Carrie, does that mean, because I'm on DCC and part of the finance committee, as far as the hotel project, that's a conflict?
Yes, because you're on the board.
Okay. All right. Well, then I have that conflict. I just didn't realize how that worked. So if there's anything I need to do, please let me know.
Yeah, I do too, as a member of DCC.
Thanks.
There's several of us.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Please make sure you inform co-chairs during the meeting if you need to disclose a conflict as it arises unexpectedly. And of course, then recuse yourself from discussion or voting on the project. And I will turn it over to Sam and Kim and Julie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so I will share my screen. I can get this here. All right, is everyone able to see the presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so thank you for joining us for our second local planning committee meeting. We're excited to be back and talking with you about and continuing the process. So this is just a recap of, or excuse me, an agenda of what we'll be covering this afternoon. So we'll be doing just a general recap of the public engagement that we've conducted since our February meeting. We'll then be going through the vision, goals, and strategies that our project team has really developed based on both input from the LPC as well as the public that we conducted a visioning session with. We'll then be going through the downtown profile at a high level and introducing some of the key findings from that downtown profile. Our document was submitted to the state, and that'll be something that we will be sharing with the LPC in the coming weeks. And then after that, we'll just be going through the preliminary list of projects that was included in Norwich's DRI application. Next steps, and then any comments and questions from the LPC. And then just a reminder in terms of public comments and questions. So this is a working session of the local planning committee. So the public may submit comments via the Zoom chat feature during the session. And we will make sure that all members of the LPC can see those comments as they come in, and will, if anything, needs to be shared with the LPC even after the meeting, we can do that as well. And then at any time or during the presentation or after the presentation, if you do have any comments or questions or feedback to share, you can always go to our DRI website, which is www.norwichdri.com. All right, so jumping right in with our public engagement recap. So since our February meeting, we have conducted two public workshops, or excuse me, one public workshop and one open call for information session. So the public workshop was held on February 16th, and this was just a chance to introduce the DRI program to the community. We did conduct an interactive visioning exercise with the public as well. It was very well attended. We had over 65 attendees. I believe many of the LPC members here today also attended that meeting. But I thought just in terms of how it went and the feedback that we received was really positive, and I think the community is really excited to get this project underway. We also held an open call for information session, which really opened up the project submissions to the public. So at this meeting, we did explain, eligibility and evaluation criteria, as well as how to submit an open call for project proposals. At this meeting, it was very well attended. We had over 50 attendees there as well. And then just as a reminder, that open call for project proposals is open until next Friday. Up until this point, we have not received any call or project submissions through the open call as of right now, but our project team has been talking to several organizations and entities, and I expect that we'll receive quite a few over the next 2 weeks. In terms of other public engagement that we have been conducting, so as I mentioned, our team has been holding stakeholder meetings with key individuals over the last month or so, just talking about potential projects that were in the original city application to the state, as well as additional members of the public that are just interested in submitting a proposal or just curious about eligibility requirements and how that process takes place. We also had during the last LPC meeting, we also asked committee members if they had any ideas for additional public engagement opportunities. And these are just some of the common themes that we had seen both from the LPC and the public. So some of those other potential opportunities we are considering exploring would be a engagement session with students from Norwich High School. And we have done this in past ERIs before, where we've gone into high schools to talk to students, just because they are the future of downtown and the future of the city. So understanding what their interests are and what they think the city need is really important. So if that's something that the committee thinks would be helpful and something that our project team should pursue, that was something that we can certainly help to organize. So I didn't know what the committee's thoughts were on, doing some youth engagement. Or just like a thumbs up if you think it might be a good idea.
Hi, Sam. This is Robert Jeffrey. I just think that youth engagement's I think that'd be something that'd be really encouraged. Obviously, they're living here existently, and the youth are going to be the future. So
yep.
I think it's important to take their input and see what they believe the future of Norwich looks like, at least to them.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Robert.
Is there a way that maybe the Norwich School District could like potentially put some candidates forward of like almost like a focus group on what they think could be some good ideas?
Yeah, that's a good idea as well.
Or like a government class or something.
Sure. Yeah.
It'd be great to have that connection, and obviously we have a tie into the school right here. Even if there are some LPC members that could go to talk about it, with them to show that engagement piece, I think would really crucial to all the things we're trying to do in terms of just getting that youth more engaged.
Yeah, let me know what you need in terms of logistics. We'll make that happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree involving the youth as well. Obviously, they're a big component here in our community and activities, especially here at the YMCA. And we actually engaged a couple on our membership committee, and it has been very positive and well received, not only by our other board members, but also the youth participating. So I would suggest that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Scott, is that something that we can connect with you on, just to see maybe who would be the best contact to reach out at the school?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, that's great. And then just a couple other opportunities that came up would be, our team has gone to several different organizational meetings, they're standing meetings. So one organization that came up through the LPC's discussion was the Shenango Links organization. So if the LPC thinks that's an organization we should talk to as well, then we'll be happy to go to a standing meeting there as well. And then lastly would be an online community survey. So I think originally the idea came up to basically circulate an online community survey similar to the visioning survey that we had conducted with both you as the committee and the public. So we're thinking of this being both a survey that businesses could distribute to their employees, but the larger community can also take if they didn't maybe get an opportunity to attend the public workshop or anything like that. So that is something that our team will work on as well. And then didn't know if there were any other suggestions for some public engagement opportunities outside of the ones that we have discussed previously.
Sam, so the online community survey, would that be the one that we also try to get the employees at NBT involved in?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. And then my only other question, and I don't think it necessarily matters, but just to throw it out there, when it's an online community survey, does it matter where respondents are living? Do they have to be living in downtown Norwich, or is not the point to not know where they are located, but just a general, what people want to see about Norwich, whether they're a resident or a visitor or just another stakeholder?
Yeah, I think we could approach that one of two ways. I think the first way would be to have the same community survey, and basically the upfront questions would identify, you know, if the person lives in Norwich, if they live in the county, if they live outside of those boundaries, or we could create potentially 2 separate surveys. So one for residents or people who work in the city or downtown, or those who live outside of the downtown. So we can discuss internally what makes the most sense, and come back to the LPC with our thoughts.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, so kind of continuing on that theme of visioning and gaining input from the community. So a really important portion of the DRI process is visioning goals and strategy setting, which really does set the stage for different types of projects that the community believes will support overall downtown revitalization. So as part of the process, our team is basically tasked with synthesizing all of the public engagement that we conduct, and basically distill it down into a specific vision, goals, and strategies. So within the city's original DRI application, there was a vision identified, which really is the guiding framework of the DRI strategic investment plan. So our team has really looked at the results from both the LPC visioning survey as well as the visioning survey we conducted with the public to basically take that vision that was established. We did tweak it a little bit, and we'll present that here to you this afternoon. And then we also added specific goals and strategies to really identify physical goals that the strategic investment plan would help to facilitate. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit in terms of the visioning session results that we conducted. So just wanted to present to everyone basically what the common themes were between the LPC visioning survey as well as the public's responses to that survey as well. So one of the first questions we asked is, you know, what is the DRI area's greatest strength? And in the center circle, you'll see here those common themes that basically both the LPC and the public had identified. So I think the #1 answer that really came out of the DRI area's greatest strength related to community. And I think that that meant community in terms of, you know, camaraderie and maybe partnerships that are so strong in downtown Norwich. And then there are a couple others listed there, including, you know, events and central. I think that basically relate to the events and the art festivals that take place in East and West Parks. Then there's accessibility, passion, potential. And then on either side of the circle, there are some unique LPC responses, which were leadership, environment, and businesses. And then on the public side, we had things such as density, active or, you know, historic buildings, inclusion, and assets. We also asked, you know, how would you like to be able to describe the DRI area in 5 years? And I think the most common themes that came out of it was, you know, there were positively themed words such as vibrant or booming, thriving, and completed. So things that lead to, you know, a really overall successful downtown environment. And then even on both the LPC and the public's responses, also very positive words, you know, growing, special, sustainable, successful, and then multimodal, diverse, regional destination, and it place came out on the public side. This was, I thought, a fun question, but we did ask what project you think would have the most significant impact in the DRI area. So some of those projects that were repeated on both the LPC and public side are listed here in that central bubble. But in the largest word here that you see in the most common response that we got was a hotel, or things like new housing options, small business incubator, and attracting major employers. So I think that these really relate to physical improvements in the downtown, and things that can draw additional visitors and expand the employment base within downtown Norwich. And then there are also some other responses that came through on both the LPC and public side, but overall relating to opportunities for employment or new housing opportunities are really things that will draw additional people into the downtown. So these results have really helped our team, as I mentioned, craft the vision, goals, and strategies that will be included within the strategic investment plan. And once we have these vision, goals, and strategies really fleshed out and identified, what will happen throughout the process is once we have the projects that will be proposed, our team, in order to really evaluate which projects make the most sense for downtown Norwich, we will compare these projects specifically to how it meets the vision, how it meets the goals, and how it meets the specific strategies for revitalization in downtown. So just starting off quickly with the vision statement, on the left-hand side of the screen, we have the original Norwich vision statement that was included in the city's application, which was a great vision statement and I think provides a wonderful base. But just to really incorporate some of the feedback that we received at both, from the LPC's perspective as well as the public workshop that we conducted, we did add some keywords to really kind of beef up the vision statement. So a lot of those changes are seen here in the yellow highlights. So what we are proposing as the revised vision statement is, Norwich will be a vibrant location of choice for a diverse population, a place where families can raise their children, young professionals can find well-paying jobs and quality housing, seniors can age in place, and visitors can experience all that Norwich has to offer. Our historic downtown, with its idyllic natural backdrop, will be a regional destination with unique retail, dining, and entertainment options, a community hub for arts and culture, and a place where residents can access essential services to support a high quality of life. So from the LPC's perspective, after sort of hearing and reading this revised vision statement, I didn't know if there were any major themes that were sort of missing from this statement, or things that you think should be added.
I think it looks great with the changes that you've made.
Great, thank you.
And he took what we came up with and made it a million times better. So thank you very much. I love it.
Great.
Where was Sam when we were going through this?
And I won't take all
great.
The hours we spent on this study, right?
Right.
Okay. And I won't take all the credit. We also have Jeanette on our team who helped kind of synthesize all the information, and she's great with sort of wordsmithing. So I'll put some of the I'll give her some of the kudos for that. But it sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement for the vision statement. And again, this can be sort of fluid as we move throughout the process. If there's something that we're like, oh, we need to add that statement, or oh, we need to add this keyword, we can always go back. But kind of wanted to just set the stage for what the specific goals and strategies will be that we'll be going through in a moment as well.
Sam, this is Adrienne. The only thing I think is missing right now, I'd agree, it's a wonderful, is students. If we're gonna kind of pull out families, seniors, professionals, just students is missing. That's the only thing that I see.
Okay.
But otherwise, great job.
All right. Thank you, Adrienne.
Yep.
Just a comment also. I think that when we continue to talk about this in our community, we have to remember that $10 million isn't going to achieve this vision, right? It's the commitment, this long-term process of really creating this, and the commitment of the residents, right, to make this happen. It's not the 10 million that allows this to happen.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, so really jumping into the goals and strategies, we did put together 4 goals with strategies underneath those. So the first goal really relates to those living within downtown Norwich. So we said the goal was to make downtown Norwich attractive to and supportive of a diverse population. And some of those specific strategies that we can implement to achieve that goal would be to expand high quality housing options to attract younger residents and professionals, provide affordable and accessible housing options for Norwich's senior and low income populations, and encourage the renovation of upper stories of downtown buildings for residential use. I didn't know if there were any initial thoughts on major themes that we included in here. But I will mention that some of the other goals hit on like things like public improvement projects or the businesses that we would like to attract to Norwich, and then Norwich being a regional destination for arts and culture and things of that nature.
I think it's really important to focus on young professionals, because I think there's a lot of emphasis always put on senior housing, which is very important. But if you don't have a place for younger people to be, they're not going to ever stay here. And then you're going to have an abundance of senior housing and no in the future, because there's no seniors to fill them in. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't want to lose sight of that, but it doesn't make sense to build all these senior places if that was the goal, and then in 10 years not have that population and no young population, because we never worked on filling that gap.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, John. Okay, great. And to John's point, that's why we have the first strategy here, really specific to younger residents or, you know, those younger professionals as well. And sort of differentiated that from the senior and low income populations too. Okay, so goal 2, we have, you know, create a vibrant, safe and welcoming downtown environment. So this could include, you know, a lot of different things, which we have listed here in the strategies, but mostly relating to public open spaces. So, you know, provide high quality public spaces and services to enhance quality of life and encourage social interaction. Promote the reuse of vacant and underutilized buildings with a mix of uses that serve both residents and visitors. Improve multimodal access and create safe, well-lit connections between destinations. Enhance the downtown wayfinding system and strengthen downtown's unique identity with public art. Seem good to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
The wayfinding system includes like signage, right? Like all
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Yep, and we can sort of identify that here too, just to make it a little bit more clear. Okay, great. All right, goal 3, I think really relates to capitalizing on the art and culture that exists within downtown Norwich. So the goal that we have drafted is make Norwich a regional destination for arts, cultural and recreational tourism. So some of the strategies that we listed here is improve public spaces to expand arts and cultural programming and events for all ages and abilities, protect and promote the historic legacy of downtown to encourage investment and activity, improve connections between downtown and surrounding destinations, including parks, trails, that should be, and the museum districts, encourage development of tourism supportive businesses, including restaurants, lodging, and entertainment options.
I think that looks good.
Okay, great. Okay. Awesome. And then lastly, so goal 4 that we put together really relates to downtown businesses and supporting entrepreneurship. So the goal would be create a thriving and supportive downtown business climate. And then strategies would be support entrepreneurship and small business creation and expansion, provide spaces and programming to support workforce development and attract job creation, encourage upgrades to buildings, storefronts, and sites, and improve downtown circulation and parking. And then I guess since this is the last goal, if there's anything major theme wise or, key opportunities that we sort of missed out on, you can feel free to let me know at this time.
I'm thinking, this is Adrian again. I wanted to wait to see what all the goals said. Thinking back to the goal 1, I think there was a word supportive in there. I can't exactly remember what it said. And I guess it was on the public, childcare was mentioned. And so I don't see that in any of the strategies specifically.
Okay.
So I didn't know if other members of the LPC think we should call that out. Because I know we're in a childcare desert, like a lot of places around us. So that was my only thing that I think is potentially missing, big picture wise.
Is these are goals for our specific DRI region, or are they goals for our area? Because I think Adrian has a good point, but to think that we're going to put a childcare center in the DRI zone at this point with nothing in play, is that really I guess that's my
right. Okay.
Yes, it's a focus of the area, but is that a focus of the DRI zone? But maybe I don't know.
And I wouldn't say like just because you put, supporting childcare centers or something like that, or opportunities to help existing families with childcare, that wouldn't necessarily mean you have to have a specific project that implements that goal or strategy. But I think if that was something that we wanted to improve in downtown Norwich, then I wouldn't see an issue with including that in this
Would
list.
we have, I'm sorry, would we have to be careful on our wording though on that because of how you said with the rules that, we can't like provide money for, like, say if someone wanted to get relief for daycare charges, would we have to be very clear on how that would be in the system?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
that these goals and strategies are just really intended to support the projects that would be recommended to the state once we're kind of formalized and done with this process.
Thank you.
And I know infrastructure is kind of a bad kind of word because it can be, misguided and think that we can, fill in the potholes and all that stuff. But when we talked before about like charging stations and open access networks, like that kind of infrastructure projects, I didn't see anything in here that really, quickly at least glancing through it, that really supported those goals.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
so we
that's a
can
good
add.
point.
Great. Yeah, we'll add either into the goals or strategies, things related to the effect of energy efficiency or supporting upgraded infrastructure. You can definitely make sure to get those words in here. Thank you.
What makes some of this difficult, like from a visioning perspective, is, another goal is, support economic development, workforce development. And, of course, for certain folks, childcare goes right in with that, right?
Yep.
So, but, I get Carrie's point about, are we talking about just this DRI area? Are we talking about things that are going to collaboratively work together to build this vision that we all are holding? So, I'm not saying it has to be put in there. It's just something that, personally, I've been having to deal with, and it's been on top of mind for a lot of folks. So I wanted to mention it.
Okay, great. Yep, thank you. Okay, so our team will revise the goals and strategies based on this conversation, and we'll likely follow up with maybe even just with an email with those changes, and then we can go from there. Yeah, thank you all for your input. That was very helpful. Okay. So kind of switching gears a little bit to the downtown profile. So our team put together what we're calling the downtown profile, and this document generally highlights the key opportunities and key challenges within downtown Norwich. So as I mentioned, this document is currently in review by the Department of State, and we will share this document with the LPC and eventually the public as well within the coming weeks. So we wanted to go through the key findings from this assessment at a high level, which really includes just a review of, socioeconomic characteristics as well as physical characteristics within the downtown. And then we also do have Dan Stevens from Camoin 310 on the line as well, who's going to take us through some of the key market and economic findings as well. Okay, so just kind of starting off with the DRI area context, everyone's very familiar with the DRI area, but generally just wanted to point out that the DRI area is central to the city of Norwich within Shenango County, in proximity to major regional destinations such as the city of Binghamton, city of Utica, Oneida, Syracuse, Cortland, and Utica. And the DRI area itself really encompasses the business improvement district, as well as a qualified opportunity area zone. And a portion of the DRI area is also part of the Brownfield Opportunity Area program. So just a refresher, on the right-hand side of the screen is our DRI area boundary, which is a total of 92 acres and expands approximately 3/4 of a mile long from end to end. So our team did cover some socioeconomic characteristics of downtown Norwich in comparison to the city and the county. So here on the screen, you'll see just some population trends of the DRI area. So in 2021, there were 406 residents within the DRI area, which accounts for approximately 6% of the city of Norwich's population. And as you can see, just based on the trends here, population since 2010 has declined and it's anticipated to continue declining until 2026. I will mention that this decline in population is consistent with trends seen at the city and county level, so it's not specific to the DRI area in general. But then also at the top of your screen, we do have some, DRI area at a glance statistics, the median age being 39, 30% poverty rate, 30% of the DRI area population has a high school only education, and then 75% of the households in the DRI area are renters.
How does that compare with the city as a whole? And maybe you'll go through that next. So.
Yeah, in terms of what? I'm sorry, Adrian.
Well, like the median age, I would be interested in, and poverty rate.
Yes. So yeah, we might get into some of that, but I would say in terms of median age, the DRI area population is younger compared to the city and county. In terms of population by age, we did take a look specifically at the composition of the DRI area and found that the largest cohorts were both in the 30 to 34-year-old range. So we're classifying this as really young families and young children. And then 60 to 64-year-olds, as well as 65 to 69-year-olds. So on this graphic here, the yellow bars are the DRI area, and then the black lines are the city of Norwich. So you can kind of see the difference. So basically the 30 to 34-year-old range here is much higher compared to the city of Norwich overall, and same for 60 to 64, 65 to 69.
Where are the 40 to 44-year-olds? I'm asking for a Gen X / millennial who are always
yeah.
forgotten.
It looks like we somehow forgot that category. I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure
There's
why that's
also-
missing.
And we are our own group, okay? We're all right here.
Cannot classify us.
You're
There's
also missing your 4 to 14s as well.
And you're 50
Oh.
to 54.
Yeah, I wonder why we did it like that. I'm sure there was a reason we did it like that.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Jeanette.
I'll jump in, Sam. Yes, what we're showing here are the age groups that have kind of significant gaps between
Okay.
the DRI area and the city of Norwich. So anything that's not included here is, the percentage of, for 5 to 9-year-olds is pretty consistent in the DRI area as it is in the city of Norwich, for example. But yeah, we can definitely build this out so you can see all the age groups. I'm sorry we didn't include the millennials in there, but yeah, Norwich has about 5.5%. The DRI area, has about 5.5% population in that millennial age range, which is pretty consistent with the county as well as the city too.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation, Jeanette. That was helpful. I guess overall from this graphic, we just wanted to show basically that, overall residents in the DRI area are of that younger population, young families with young children, but that residents within the DRI area are also getting older. So that median age of 39 that we presented is projected to increase over the next 5 years. So just thinking about that in terms of, potential housing opportunities and employment opportunities within the DRI area over the next 5 years. In terms of employment, so this graphic here shows that the overall employment rate within the DRI area is 10%, but that it's higher in comparison to, the 16 to 24-year-old range has a higher unemployment rate as compared to the city and county. Overall, unemployment rates are higher in the DRI area. In the city, unemployment rates are 6.7%, and in the county, it is 5.9%. So within the DRI area itself, it's about double. So just the key thing to take away from this, in our opinion, is that, diversified jobs and housing options can really help to attract new residents and encourage others to stay in Norwich, as well as help to there are opportunities to expand job creation and employment opportunities within the city of Norwich itself.
For the 16 to 24-year-olds, how did you determine, if someone's at college, but their address is still here, but they're at college, how does that work with unemployment rate?
Dan, I don't know if you had a way that you kind of sifted that information out from your demographic analysis or not.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone this afternoon. Just to jump in quickly here, the college data, can be teased out a little bit. It depends, and this is kind of goes back to the underlying census data that this, I believe that this data came from, has to do with where, the household of record is recorded. So, college students, with their home address would typically, be picked up, if they're in, the DRI area, and they're still getting picked up with that home address, then, that would factor in here versus, if they've got an off-campus, apartment, wouldn't be more likely to pick up, outside of this. So it's, I know that's not a clear answer, but that's kind of one of the underlying issues with that kind of data.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So just talking about unemployment overall, so within the city of Norwich, not just the DRI area, there are approximately 4,200 employees employed in the city of Norwich. But out of those 4,200 employees, 80% of them commute into the city of Norwich for employment, meaning that 80% are living outside of the city itself. So some of those top employers in Norwich are shown on the right-hand side of the screen, being NBT Bank with 1,500 employees, Shenango County with 550 employees, and then UHS Shenango Memorial Hospital with around 500 employees. Overall, the city of Norwich has experienced a larger job loss over the past 20 years as compared to the county. So 10% in the city of Norwich zip code versus Shenango County at 5%. And then overall too, just in terms of average earnings for those within the city of Norwich, that average earning is lower compared to Shenango County. So overall, our team just sees opportunities to both improve the downtown environment, to attract new workers and expand housing options to really attract people to live within the city of Norwich, where they are working. And then also opportunities to really create higher paying jobs within Norwich itself as well. And Dan will get into some more specifics regarding the market analysis for the city and downtown specifically. But kind of switching gears a little bit to sort of the physical characteristics of downtown Norwich, our team did do an assessment of land use, zoning, recreational resources, historic resources. So we're just going to go over, our key findings from those at a high level. So overall, in terms of land use, the DRI area is comprised of a mix of land uses, as you can see on the map, but really those land uses contribute overall to its walkability and its compactness. Based on the land use by total acreage, over 50% of the land within the DRI area is commercial land. So this is really buildings in the form of downtown row buildings. And a large portion of this is also the Eaton Center office complex, which is located in the southern area of the DRI area as well. And then there are also other uses interspersed in there, the next highest category being residential community services. And I'll also mention here too that commercial land also includes apartment complexes. So that's sort of rolled into commercial and not just specifically residential land. In terms of land ownership, 20 acres or approximately 22% of land within the DRI area is publicly owned. So this is land owned by both the city of Norwich as well as the Shenango County Industrial Development Agency, the Shenango County itself, which owns East and West Parks, and Suny Morrisville as well. Zoning, so the DRI is regulated by the City of Norwich zoning ordinance, and these zoning districts really just permit a variety of uses that help to support downtown vibrancy and living. So as you can see here on the right side of the screen on the map, over half of the DRI is zoned as general business, and this generally allows commercial establishments with dwellings on the second story unit, but we sort of just wanted to show basically the zoning regulations within this area, just to give you an idea of what generally is permitted. In terms of historic resources, so the DRI area is very rich in historic and cultural resources, and that's really what makes up that unique character of the DRI. So within the DRI area itself, there are 2 historic districts. The North Broad Street Historic District kind of touches the northern portion of the DRI, and then the Shenango County Courthouse District really encompasses that central portion of the DRI area. And then there are a number of locally, or excuse me, state and national buildings and sites that are located throughout the DRI area as well, including the Unguentine Building, the Shenango County Courthouse, and the Eaton Family Residence and Jewish Center of Norwich, which is in the lower portion of the DRI area. But basically, just wanted to show that there are a lot of historic resources that can be leveraged to really facilitate additional investment in downtown revitalization. In terms of cultural resources, there are several cultural resources that contribute to the overall DRI area's quality of life. So some of these cultural resources are shown here on the screen. We have, the Historical Society that offers unique exhibits and event spaces for the community to use. We have the Car Museum, which draws visitors from across the country, and while outside the DRI area is very proximate, and there are people that are visiting that space and coming into the DRI area that can be leveraged as well. The Colonia Theater is a feature of downtown, and it's really characterized by the signature marquee on Broad Street. It's open to the public for movie showings and rental spaces for events, and just a really signature feature of downtown. And then while not a physical resource, but festivals such as Colorscape that attract 10 to 12,000 people to the DRI area are really things that make up that vibrancy and culture of downtown Norwich itself, and things that can be leveraged. In terms of recreational resources, I think that Norwich is really unique to have the central community green space right on Broad and West Main Street. So I think that in terms of East and West Park, it really provides a great space for community events and recreational opportunities. And I believe that Norwich could leverage these spaces to facilitate future tourism, future activity, and vibrancy within the downtown area itself. There are also nearby recreational resources outside of downtown, and some of which are outside of the city, but that people, visitors and residents go to on a regular basis, and that can be leveraged. So for example, there's the Stone Quarry, which is a recreational destination for hiking, biking, snowshoeing, and cross-country skiing. But what our team found is that even though there are a lot of recreational resources within the city of Norwich and just outside the city of Norwich, there tend to be a lack of connections to these nearby parks and spaces. So, just thinking about ways we can enhance these connections to these spaces for residents to visit and as well as attract additional visitors to them. We also took a look at the street network, and it's important to understand really how the street network and users interact with downtown. So overall, there's a series of streets, the major ones being Broad Street and East Main Street, that provide mobility throughout the downtown. And there are also a number of side streets that you can see here with very low traffic shown in green. But overall, while these streets are functionable, our team believes that there are opportunities to both enhance walkability and multimodal transportation, and really just ways to encourage more pedestrian and bicycle activity. And that could include improvements such as, upgraded or new sidewalks, lighting, could be pedestrian amenities, benches to encourage people to kind of stop and enjoy the downtown environment, or just, simply stay connected to those close by downtown destinations as well. In terms of public transit, so public transit is provided by Shenango First Transit, which operates across the county. And the city really does act as the hub for this bus route transportation system. And you'll see those specific routes here on the map on the right-hand side. But in terms of ensuring accessibility, so we also pulled some vehicle ownership data, which was really interesting, and found that 34% of renter households within the DRI area do not own a vehicle. And that's very high compared to those living just within the city of Norwich itself. And then 1% of owner occupied households don't own a vehicle compared to 2% within the city of Norwich. But really just ensuring that accessible public transportation exists is important, and ensuring that residents do have accessible options to access a range of goods and services within their area. So just kind of just putting that into context there. And then in terms of underutilized and brownfield sites, so we did take a look at basically those underutilized and vacant sites within the DRI area itself, and also utilize the Brownfield Opportunity Area nomination study that was recently completed to sort of generate our list of what those underutilized and brownfield sites are. But in terms of downtown revitalization, we believe that, you know, some of these buildings on the screen here are underutilized, may have potential contamination on site that could be remediated and could be redeveloped or adaptively reused to really spur economic development in the downtown. And this could be for a variety of uses, including, you know, housing options or lodging or retail options within the city of Norwich. So that's really just an overview of the physical characteristics of downtown. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Dan from
Can I ask
Camoin
a
310.
question?
Yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
I'm Mary.
Oh, Mary, sorry.
That's okay. Well, when you say underutilized, just so I'm understanding, you know, I see the Mavis building in there, which is a very active business. How is that underutilized? Or are you looking to sell? Hopefully they'd buy that, someone would buy, or?
So in terms of that one, so that one would not be underutilized, but is categorized as a potential brownfield site. And that's just based on its use as, you know, an auto mechanic shop. So in terms of, you know, some of the auto mechanic shops that have existed, they have potential soil and groundwater contamination. So
Okay.
that one isn't shown in terms
Okay,
of
now I
underutilization,
understand.
but yep.
Thank
But
you
good,
so much.
good
I'm sorry.
clarification though, Mary, thank you.
Yeah, I go there all the time.
Yep. Okay. All right, so I'm going to actually hand it over to Dan to talk more specifically about the housing, tourism, and retail market within downtown Norwich, because some of the findings that he was able to come up with are very interesting, I think. So Dan, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, happy to. So we've had our heads buried in economic and market data for the past couple of weeks, and we'll talk a little bit about those key findings. And I know you'll all get a chance to read that market analysis report in the coming weeks and dig into that a little bit more. But in terms of market analysis, what we're talking about, is really the real estate market. And really from a private perspective, what are the opportunities that might be able to draw private investment? But it is important to keep in mind when we're talking about these market opportunities, there are the opportunities that exist here today. And then, with the DRI, obviously this is a process that's all about changing market dynamics and leveraging investments and public improvements to change market dynamics and create new opportunities and enhance existing opportunities. So I'll do my best to point out some of those kind of nuances as we move forward here. But starting with the housing market, from what we've seen in the data that we've looked at and the analysis that we've done, there does seem to be strong market potential for housing in the DRI area. And so you recall we were looking at the aspirational goals of attracting young professionals and senior housing, and there's market reality to those goals. There is that unmet potential that's out there. So with the high quality rental units here, That pertains to young professionals, but it also pertains to seniors. And so, senior housing, there's definitely a need for affordable senior housing, but there's also at the other end of the income spectrum, we do see that there's a pretty large contingent of wealthier senior households, and so that becomes a target market of consideration when we talk about who can we attract to the downtown, who would be interested in living here. That's certainly becomes part of the demand picture. So, when we look at some of these market metrics, the data that we look at, we see that vacancy rates are low currently for rental units. Supply is fairly limited and very limited supply of newer, modern rental units, compared with, the city and county and, other comparable communities. And so, that tells us that there's this unmet market demand potential for those types of housing units. The senior housing, affordable, and then, generally low income housing. We saw some of the data on that earlier. There is that, large segment of the population in need of affordable housing. And, there is additional demand and need that can be met in the DRI area. And of course, having, mixed income downtowns, is critical for, a healthy city, healthy downtown. And so, it's important to keep that demand segment in mind as well. I want to talk a little bit about the commuters. We had talked about that 80%, essentially 80% in commuter rate. So, going back to the jobs, 8 out of 10 jobs in the city are filled with people that are waking up every morning and commuting into the city, which is a fairly high number. There is no appropriate number. It is kind of a spectrum, if you will, but 80% is certainly on the higher end of that spectrum when we look at these types of commuting statistics. And often what that tells us is, the housing that, would be attractive to, a portion of those workers that are commuting in is just not available, whether it's price point, whether it's quality, whether it's the type of housing. That tells us that there's an unmet opportunity to attract some of those commuters to downtown. Now, certainly a large number of those commuters are always going to be commuting in for a variety of reasons. But, even if you, start talking about 5% or, a proportion of those in commuters, capturing them in the downtown, that potentially means some significant market demand for housing. And so, that's definitely one key target market for housing downtown. So why don't we move on to the next slide here, talk a little bit about the tourism market. And so one of the things when we looked at data related to tourism and entertainment that really stood out is just how underserved the city and the downtown area is by restaurants. We look at data on the demand side. So, what households would be expected to spend every year going out for meals. And we compare that to, what, and what the data is telling us that there is in terms of actual restaurants and spending at those restaurants. And so, simple comparison of supply and demand, tells us that there's a pretty big gap currently. And so, folks are leaving the city or not going out to eat, substituting, other things for meals and, simply not going out to eat. But there is that potential for the DRI area to have some additional restaurants and so on. And, we have to always be cognizant of COVID and, we don't know what that's going to mean for the future, obviously, but, as things continue to rebound and people are, continuing to be more comfortable going out, we're seeing, generally a rebound in that sector. Microbrewery or brew pub is kind of a specific category that stood out, not only looking at the restaurant data, but also, opportunities around beverage manufacturing in the region. And, combined with the fact that, these are things that have performed, traditionally have performed pretty well in similar types of downtowns. I'm sure everyone's, has checked one of these out in some form in some downtown at some point. But these can be really great, attractors of people, drivers of economic activity, and for which there appears to be a gap right now in the city. We also have taken a close look at lodging data. And so we have pulled data that gives us things like occupancy rates, actual room nights sold, available supply, all kinds of great hotel metrics for the city and the county as a whole. And I know this is of particular interest. And so what we saw when we looked at that data were that, things were trending in a good direction pre-COVID. So things like occupancy rates were increasing. The average daily rate charged by hotel establishments in the county and city were rising. All of these kind of positive things that would be favorable for, potential additional development. And then, of course, with COVID in 2020, we see very clearly, things bottoming out as you would probably have expected. But the silver lining there is when we looked at the data, we do see a pretty strong rebound already in 2021. So not quite to pre-COVID levels, but when you get a chance to kind of comb through the report in more detail, you'll see some of those graphs where it's, really a strong bounce back. And so, we're optimistic again. Nobody knows where COVID is going, but if things continue on, we kind of expect that that pre-COVID trend to pick up. And so again, that was improving occupancy levels, improving rates, improving demand. Overall, the number of rooms that people are renting, has been trending up. And so, I think we're probably getting close, I would say, in the near to midterm, where I think market conditions are probably going to be favorable for some type of establishment. I think, probably nobody's going to build anything tomorrow, but, within the next couple of years, I think, this becomes a real market opportunity. And, the other thing that I will say there, right, with lodging, all kind of considerations in terms of feasibility of, a new establishment. And so we've just touched on some of the metrics, but some of the things that we've already talked about, the potential to attract new people downtown can really change the feasibility picture for lodging. And so, I know there are public spaces that can be better activated. We talked a little bit about some of the recreational amenities that can be better leveraged, to attract visitors. All of those things can really greatly enhance that market potential. And so those become really critical in terms of development potential and economic development. And then on the entertainment option piece, we've looked, at the surrounding regions. So, when we look at retail and data and so on, we look kind of at a trade area, local, what is the city, households in the city, what are they able to support in terms of entertainment and retail? But, when we draw kind of a bigger area, cast a bigger net, kind of going further out from the city center, there's a lot of spending potential out there, a lot of economic potential for the DRI. There's wealthy households, further out. There's a lot of second homeowners in particular that stood out in some of the data. And so, if there are strategies to attract those types of households to the downtown, and so that can be entertainment, it can be amenities, recreation, those types of things, events, all of those kind of play into that picture, there's really potential for the DRI to serve as an entertainment hub for the broader region. And then if we can just go to the next slide here to quickly talk about retail. So, retail, I think, generally we're finding is probably not what we would consider a very strong market opportunity, at least today. And, we've identified some categories here, again, going back to that kind of gap analysis, the supply and demand. These are things where, city residents are having to generally leave the area to shop for. Some of these things, exist, but, this is where there's what we would call retail leakage, leaking spending out of the community. But when we dig into this a little bit more, there's really not a lot of potential to support maybe a full business in any one of these categories. But it doesn't necessarily mean that these aren't, relevant. There are ways to kind of tap into these categories, whether it's, a store that may, cut across some of these different categories. And then it also speaks to the need to change, the market dynamics. And, really two of the things that I think I would emphasize the most, the importance of bringing people downtown. There's an old adage, right, that retail follows rooftops. So, it takes people, population, spending power to attract those retail businesses that you want to see, to help create a vibrant downtown. And so it is really critical to bring people downtown. And then again, bringing those visitors in, the second homeowners, expanding the draw area of the downtown by having the amenities, events, and so on. That really enhances, the retail potential that we see here. And then I'll just lastly touch on this kind of the niche offerings, which is really referring to, those kind of more destination retail offerings, things that are really tailored to folks in the region, specific visitor groups, that, maybe are not kind of within the traditional supply and demand analysis, but may have potential, by being really, really targeted. So I think with that, I'll turn it back over. But again, just to emphasize that, there's a lot of market opportunity that exists today, and then really enhanced market potential, as we start to talk about public improvements and how those can be leveraged to kind of change the market outlook here.
Great, thanks, Dan. Okay, so what our team did is try to synthesize based on all of that information we just presented. And again, this goes into more detail in the actual downtown profile document that you will be, or have the chance to review. But really those key opportunities and key issues and opportunities as they relate to one another. So some of the physical issues that we see in downtown Norwich relate to aging streetscape, and I'll add utility infrastructure in that bubble as well. And in addition to underutilized buildings within the downtown Norwich area. And then in terms of some of the more market-based issues, the high employment levels in combination with lower income levels of DRI occupations, in combination with significant job loss that has been seen across, downtown Norwich and the city in general. There is a lack of high quality rental units in the downtown Norwich area, and then coupled with aging population and just overall the difficulty attracting and retaining young people within the downtown as well. So some of those opportunities relate specifically to those issues related to housing development and expanding housing opportunities at a range of price points for people to be attracted to downtown. Really adaptively reusing historic buildings for new uses, and coupled with the potential for tourism supportive businesses, including lodging, restaurants, and housing that Dan just went through for us. And then there's also, physical improvements that relate to overall quality of life and tourism within the downtown. So opportunities to enhance the public realm and overall connectivity, improve public parks and downtown spaces for, the arts and cultural events that take place. And then really leveraging that, Norwich for the center of arts and culture, and expanding on those events in the downtown. I guess, are there any specific questions or comments? I know this is probably a lot of information and you'll be able to read it eventually in the downtown profile itself, and that'll provide a little bit more context, but just wanted to provide everyone some of those initial key findings of, kind of how we see the, what we're seeing on the ground and how that can relate to potential projects to really help some of those issues and opportunities that we're seeing.
I
My
don't
only
know.
question.
Go ahead,
Go ahead,
Adrian.
Mary. My only question is, when it comes to the restaurants and the data about the spending, I guess my assumption is that that's not based on the actual number of restaurants that we have or the lodging that we have. It's based on the spending that should be based on our city size. So let's say, maybe we have 10 restaurants, but people are only eating at 2 of them. We still have that potential to add new restaurants to the market if 8 of them aren't being, visited at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, I think, let me try and address that. I think I understand the question. So
Okay.
when we, at least on the restaurants side, right, so it's both. We look at both what's existing now, and so, there's, and I don't have the number right in front of me, but, there's X number of restaurants, and, the total sales of those restaurants adds up to, Y every year. And so, we look then at, the city population and, based on income levels and, typical spending patterns for households, all of the households in the city would be expected to spend a certain amount on restaurants every year. And so we simply compare that to what's being spent at actual restaurants in the city. And so, if all the households in the city spend a combined 10 million eating out every year, but the existing restaurants have sales of 2 million, then that gives us an 8 million gap, which could potentially then support new restaurants, which would get a piece of that gap, essentially.
Okay, yeah. So it could be quality, not quantity, is, I guess, the better way of phrasing my question in some of these instances.
Right. So, right, where our analysis is more focused on kind of the numbers, but certainly there's the qualitative piece that comes into that. If there's a certain, gap in a specific type, whether it's, different categories of, level of service. So there's fast casual, like your Five Guys or something like that. But if you're missing a fine dining, so even if the numbers say, hey, the market's saturated, if you don't have something in the right category, that can pose an opportunity as well.
I
Mary,
think that
sorry.
speaks to the housing too, because, or not housing, but to hotel space. We lose a lot of activity due to the fact that they're going to places outside of Norwich that are nicer places, hence the hotel project.
Yeah, I think that's an important consideration. What is, the kind of the competitive advantage? What is the, what is the kind of the market niche, that's not being met right now, would certainly play into the feasibility of that kind of a lodging establishment. So yeah, I think, with any new hotel lodging, it's going to have to be focused on, serving that kind of market need, that you've identified.
And as a follow-up to Adrian's question a little bit about where the data is pulled from, how do you account for people who maybe work close enough to the area that would have utilized these things but don't live in the city? Or does it average out? Like when you say per household, there's an understanding or it's built into the data that there's a certain percentage of people that maybe utilize those services locally, even though they don't live there? Or is that a whole other data set?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because it does start to get complicated. So typically when we look at things like retail, we're not looking specifically at the city boundaries, but we're drawing a broader trade area, which would typically pick up a lot of the people that would be commuting in. And so typically those are getting picked up. But if you have a large incommuting population outside of that trade area, right, that's potentially an additional market opportunity. We don't necessarily have a way to tease that out of that actual spending data. So I would say, any kind of large employment base coming, folks coming from outside of the trade area would be, a notable additional opportunity. So we can note that, but because we have defined a trade area, I think we're picking up most of those folks at this point. But that is a great question.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the major employers, even not only within the district, but immediately outside. And, just thinking about things like lunch and dinner, retail shopping. How much is that? Are we sort of like the exception and not the rule because of these large manufacturers and companies here? Or is this pretty, like, not saying we're different than every other community, but I'm just thinking, between all these huge companies, right, within maybe 10 to 15 minutes from the center of downtown, it's a lot of people. And I don't think most of them live here, but maybe, I don't know if that matters in the report. That's why I was asking.
No, that's it's definitely an important consideration, especially when you talk about or you think about, lunch break, the opportunities for attracting people for meals. And then, typically, people will do a lot of shopping, midweek shopping after work for kind of convenience items, all of those things certainly come into play.
Okay, great. Okay. So moving on to some of the preliminary projects. So we wanted to kind of just provide an overview of the preliminary list of projects that were included in the city's application to the state for the DRI program. And I will preface this conversation and say that the details of a lot of these projects do need to be fleshed out, but that is sort of what our team will be tasked with over the next couple of months. And we will certainly be providing more detail. And once we receive the open call for project proposals, our team will be fleshing out the detail for all of these projects and presenting a full list at our April meeting as well. So just as a refresher, so there are 4 different types of eligible projects under the DRI program. So we have categorized the projects that were in the city's application into these 4 eligible project types. So we'll be going through public improvement projects, development and rehabilitation projects, the revolving loan fund or grant program, as well as branding and marketing projects. So really starting off with the public improvement projects, the first one that was included within the city's application was related to Rails with Trail. So this would be the New York S&W rail line that traverses along the eastern boundary of the Norwich DRI and would really enhance this rail line into a multi-use trail on side of the existing rail line. And this is intended really to better connect the downtown to the museum district. And so this project we will need to coordinate specifically with the rail line and the Shenango County IDA for access agreements and things like that. But that is something that our team will be working with the project sponsor on to really flush this project out. We also have identified American Avenue enhancements. So this is looking east at American Avenue from Broad Street. And you can see the Unguentine building in the back there. But this project is really looking into streetscape enhancements, including pavement treatments, pedestrian amenities, and public art. And this would really be intended to make American Avenue a more welcoming connection for those traveling off of Broad Street. So I know that there are several businesses along the street, but really our team will be looking into and working with the city to identify maybe opportunities to just enhance this corridor as is, or potentially and leave as a one-way route. But also our team is also considering maybe looking into converting this access into pedestrian only as well. So more to come, and we'll be having conversations with the city, and I believe there's a traffic committee that the city also works with. So we'll be providing more details on some of those decisions as well at the April meeting. Kind of in the same vein, our Broad Street enhancements. So within the application, there was an identified need to really improve the streetscape environment of Broad Street throughout the downtown. And some of those enhancements could just include enhanced access, safety improvements, or the installation of pedestrian amenities. We also have been talking with the city about potentially including on-street EV charging stations on Broad Street as well. But overall, just really improving the physical environment of Broad Street to create a more walkable and welcoming environment. I would say the same types of improvements, including pedestrian access and installation of amenities on Main Street, both on West and East Main Street, are being considered. And this could also include crosswalk enhancements on West Main Street as well. So our team will be working with the city to identify specific improvements and help to come up with specific cost estimates for those improvements.
Sam, Adrian's got her hand up. Do you want her to wait for questions, or do you want to take them as?
Oh, no, you can ask a question, Adrian.
I just had a question with those enhancements that goes into the vibrancy that was a common theme. Something I was thinking about was how to expand outdoor dining. You know, I know during COVID, it was a big thing. Like everyone had to like have dining outdoors. But I know for a lot of downtowns, like seeing people out and enjoying meals, well, you know, it keeps it feeling alive. And I know we do have some establishments that have outdoor dining, but it's in the back. So I was just putting that out there to kind of think about that as plans progress and how we can get more outdoor dining more visible.
That's a great point. Thank you, Adrian.
You're welcome.
Okay. Where was I? Okay, so parking lot improvements. So this is the Hayes Street parking lot off of Broad Street, and this is Hayes Street down here to the south. But some of the improvements that were proposed in the application included safety and aesthetic improvements to the parking lot. So this could include both access enhancements and just creating a more welcoming environment again. So looking at the installation of lighting and pedestrian amenities such as benches. It could include bike racks or landscaping as well. And then the city would like to consider the installation of EV charging stations in this location as well, since it's such a utilized public parking lot in the downtown. East and West Park is also another public improvement. So this is East and West Parks are both owned by the county, but maintained by the city. So this may require a partnership between the county and city to potentially propose some improvements, but really looking at ways to improve the public sector of the public spaces. So really just making this more of an attractive area for events and really enhancing those events that take place. So the installation of new amenities, including bikes or bench racks, lighting, and then there are some other potential improvements on the table to enhance the performance spaces and opportunities as well, such as electrical and water infrastructure hookups to allow for those different performances and events that take place. The Park Plaza. So this would be, so what you see on the right-hand side of the screen is just like a representative image. So basically this would be a multi-purpose space and just east of East Park. And it's currently a parking lot that's owned by Frontier Communications, but I believe that this lot is used during events for sort of like this multi-purpose space, but this project specifically would include really outfitting this space with different pavement markings or treatments, landscaping, or hookups to really just enhance the ability to have food trucks and events when downtown events are taking place.
Sam, I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
Can a public improvement project take place on a privately owned parking lot like that?
So I think that we're going to have to work through some details as it comes to this. So obviously that would have to have an agreement between Frontier and the city to do those types of improvements. But yes, overall, public improvements on private property is an eligible project under the DRI program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, because that's a private owned, would that then change the percentage of the funding? Or because that's a public improvement, that would still do the 100%?
So that, I think because it would be sponsored by the city, it would be eligible for the 100% funding. But again, we're going to have to really go through the details of this and make sure that that is still eligible by the DRI program to have it go through that type of funding. And then also, you know, the first step is really making sure that there can be an agreement between Frontier Communications and the city to even propose this. So this was
Sam?
just, yep, go ahead, Kimberly.
Just building on that, there are examples where this has successfully been done in other DRIs. Last round, the city of Hornell, there was a parcel that was owned by one of the local banks that got funding to turn into a public park space. The key is really reaching an agreement between the private property owner and the city for really an extended long-term agreement, right? Because what the DRI doesn't want to do is make investments in a public space that have the potential to only be there for 3 years or 5 years. But if an extended longer-term agreement for use of that land can be agreed to, a project like this can move forward, even with kind of that unique relationship.
Thanks, Kimberly. Okay. So the last public project that was in the application relates to security cameras. So this would include the installation of security cameras in key locations to enhance downtown safety. So I believe that the city will be talking with the city police department to understand maybe where security cameras make the most sense to be installed. So we will come back to you at the April meeting with some more concrete information about this project. Okay. So just moving on to some of the new development, redevelopment, and rehabilitation projects. So the first one we have that was listed in the application relates to a downtown visitor center. So this would be creating a visitor center that serves as an information hub and gateway to downtown businesses and attractions. it's my understanding that there is an opportunity to outfit the space in the existing Commerce Shenango building for this purpose. So as I mentioned, need to really clarify some more details about what this project would entail, but really this is something that is being developed as of right now. The downtown Norwich Boutique Hotel would be the rehabilitation of the currently vacant building at 1416 South Broad Street and would include a 45-unit boutique hotel. So as of right now, DCC, the Development Commerce Shenango, is working with a potential developer to outfit this space, and more details to come. The Shenango Arts Council building rehabilitation. So this is kind of a multifaceted project. There are some improvements that Shenango Arts Council wants to make to really improve both the existing theater, which could include upgrades to the existing seating or performance and electrical units in that space. But there's also an opportunity really to enhance some of the existing offices into a maker space for entrepreneurs or potential artists that would be coming into the area or building, so they can use it for their creative abilities. And then CHIPS, which is the Shenango Housing Improvement Program, would also is interested in making some ADA accessibility improvements. So this would include the potential of the installation of a new elevator to access the upper floors, as well as some ADA accessibility improvements to the site itself for entering into the building. The Suny Morrisville Workforce Development Training Center was also listed in the city's application. So I believe that Suny Morrisville is working on determining what that space could look like and what potential building this would be outfitted at within the downtown environment, but really intended to be a workforce training center and building off of entrepreneurs and working to really increase employment opportunities within the Norwich region. Okay. In terms of the loan or grant fund, I believe we talked about this a little bit before, but so each community is eligible for one revolving loan fund or grant fund through the DRI. So this small project grant fund will be working with the city, Commerce Shenango, and the committee to determine what the small project grant fund would look like in terms of eligibility requirements and activities, but essentially the grant fund would be intended to support business and property owners implement small projects on their sites within the downtown. So it could include things like facade or window improvements or site upgrades as well. And this could also include public art if the committee was interested in entering that as a potential eligible activity. And then lastly, in terms of branding and marketing, so signage and wayfinding. So this would be intended to traverse the entire DRI area, but really identifying both directional and identification signs to be installed within the downtown to help really direct visitors and residents to key destinations. So more to come on that project. And then lastly, a public art campaign. So this would include a campaign to install a series of public art installations, including public murals and art sculptures, really to just enhance downtown's unique identity and sense of place. So I think as of right now, this would be sponsored by the city, but maybe in conjunction and support with the Shenango Arts Council as well. Okay.
And with the public art campaign, is that similar to the Frontier parking lot where just because Nina's is here and they've got that mural on the side of the building, if there was a building that's privately owned, but that the city or the LPC thought would be great for a mural, like how does that process work on getting the permission from the property owner and identifying where in the DRI area makes the most sense for murals or sculptures?
Yeah, so our project team has actually talked to a organization that is interested and has kind of come up with several ideas for locations for public art, whether it be murals or sculptures in the downtown. So what would have to happen, I think, is in order for it to be an eligible project, we're going to need basically permission from those downtown property owners to make sure that they would be okay with the installation of those art murals or sculptures. So that is something that we'll be working on throughout the process to see what that looks like. But if we cannot get agreement from property owners, this might be a project that falls off. But as I mentioned, the small project grant fund could cover art installation. So that's something that downtown property owners could maybe apply for through that separate process through the small project grant fund as well.
And there's only one grant fund. So even if we couldn't have one that's for public art and one that's for something different.
Correct.
Okay.
Sam, do you mind if I interject here just a little bit on this?
Go ahead, Carrie.
So there've been a couple sideline meetings, and I think that's what's happening with some of these things is that, people get excited, and the public art project is one of those. So, I had a conversation, the mayor and I spoke with the Shenango Arts Council earlier this week because they were obviously very interested in the art project. We have a local community person who's connected to Norwich and Shenango County who wants to be a part of that, and of course the city, and then even Friends of the Park. So there have been a lot of conversations about how to do this, how to make it inclusive, and I think what part of what we're going to do is when we find out about these things, the mayor and myself as co-chairs, we're helping to bring those groups together to make sure that we're not double doing things. So now that we know there's 3 or 4 different groups interested in this, rather than having them all separate working on this, we're going to pull them together and talk about it. So I just want to interject that.
So that is all we have on our initial list of projects that were in the city's application. As I mentioned, we're pretty light on some of the project details, but that's something that we would hope to have fleshed out a little bit more, and we'll be presenting at our April meeting. So more to come on that front, but didn't know if there were any initial questions on some of those projects before we wrap up. Okay, great. Well, I know that this has been a long meeting with a lot of information, so I thank you all for kind of sticking with us through it. But in terms of next steps, so as we kind of walked through, the downtown profile is completed and it is currently in review by the Department of State. Hopefully we'll be able to get that out for your review in the next couple of weeks. As a reminder, the open call for project proposals is currently open, but all submissions are due on March 18th. So if you're working with anyone or organizations on a project proposal, please make sure they get it in before that date. And then, as I mentioned, so the initial list of projects that we just went through, our team is working with project sponsors such as the city, Commerce Shenango, to really develop some of these projects and get the details a little bit fleshed out. So the development of those project profiles are ongoing. And then in terms of engagement, our next LPC meeting, just because we kind of preliminarily scheduled all our LPC meetings for the process. So the next one will be Tuesday, April 12th at 3 p.m. I believe we're doing recurring invites for all of these meetings. So hopefully everyone should already have it on their calendars. And then we're also planning the second public workshop in April, details to be determined, and stakeholder meetings are ongoing. So that's where we're headed. And I'll kind of provide this opportunity for any last minute comments or questions at this point.
I have a question, Sam. This is Peggy LaPresti. I want to know if you could provide for us the best example of DRI funds transforming a downtown area anywhere close to us. I mean, I would just love to take a drive and, see real examples of communities that have participated in this DRI project and see what the end result looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that all of the DRI programs and the implementation of projects are all sort of at different stages of their development and implementation. But I know one that just comes to the top of my head is in the city of Rome. A new marquee was installed on the Capitol Theater. So that's something that I think would be a great physical improvement that you can see in the downtown in the city of Rome. And then I'm trying to think of others. Kimberly, I don't know if you can think of any others off the top of your head that were already implemented.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work going on in the background. And right, Julie probably has more. We're very familiar with the 8 that we've worked on more so than the others. And I know Julie had to log off a little bit early for this call, but that might be a good question to pose with her. I know the ones that, our team has worked on, they're all in various phases of implementing their projects. And none of them have fully implemented all $10 million worth of projects that have been funded to them. So I know a few in kind of round 1. Jamestown is pretty far along in their implementation within their downtown area. I know Geneva has completed a number of their projects from the round 1 funding. So those would be 2 that I could think of, but I think Julie would be a great resource for this and probably has a better handle on the full breadth of projects.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And then I'll just mention too, so like the New York State DRI website has a listing of not only the strategic investment plans that were submitted in the past 4 rounds, but there's also the projects listed that were actually selected for awards. So you could always look to see like what types of projects were selected for awards. And I don't think it really has any information related to the stage of development that it's in, but you can at least see what has been selected in past rounds.
I have a quick question, and this might be a stupid one or not, with the projects that have been submitted, from the 4 categories, do you have pricing with these already? Like, do we know we're close to 10 million? Do we think we're at 2 million? Are we at 20 million? I just have no concept of where we are, just to give an idea, because if we're going to get 20 more projects that we don't even know are coming, it's going to get quite competitive, obviously. And so I was just curious if we had, we being all of you, had an idea of where any of these projects stand, because I didn't know if some of them are $10,000 projects or $1 million. I just have no idea.
Sure. Yeah, so I would say that's something that we're going to definitely be able to provide at our April meeting. And I think that with the combination of projects that were in the original application and those that'll be coming in through the open call, they have to submit basically their total project cost and DRI request for funding. So I think at the next meeting, we'll be able to provide a little bit more concrete information. And then in terms of just competitiveness, yeah, I think it eventually is probably going to get down to, either eliminating some projects or reworking some projects to make sure that we are really within that range of basically 12 to 15 million to submit as part of the strategic investment plan. So there will be a lot of conversations over the next, I would say, the next April, May, June meeting are probably going to be a little bit more concrete in terms of, that information we're providing and decisions that need to be made by the LPC and discussed as a group.
I saw there was one comment or one question by Randall Hadid. Was that addressed?
I did not see.
It says curious, should the streetscape enhancements not be undertaken by the county?
No, I think that it makes sense that the city would be the project sponsor for the streetscape enhancements, since they are the ones that are responsible for maintenance and everything like that.
Thank you.
The city, not the county.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, I would say thank you for attending today's meeting. I know we threw a lot of information at you, and we will be following up soon with the downtown profile, and looking forward to seeing everyone again in April.
Thank you.
For your work.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.